Jimmy Kempski. Let's talk a little bit about the Eagles game tonight and what you're expecting out of this football team, maybe starting with how much do we expect to see the ones? Hopefully more than 3 plays.
Yeah, Doug said they're going to play the first quarter, the entirety of it, and probably extend into the second quarter. He said probably, maybe somewhere around a quarter and a half for the ones, and then I would imagine you'll see the twos for a while before they give way to the back of the roster guys.
And what are some of the narratives that you're looking for and some of the guys that you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, well, first of all, you look at the offensive line. This will be the first game where they'll start Alan Barber out at right tackle in place of the likely soon-to-be suspended Lane Johnson. Barber, obviously, last season didn't have the best season as a starter at left guard. Now you're asking him to play a bigger role for, likely the first 10 games of the season with Johnson, probably going to be out. And then with Barber moving over, the guy who's going to get the first crack at starting anyway will be Isaac Seumalo, the rookie third-round pick out of Oregon State. Didn't have a great first preseason game there. To me, he looks like a guy who eventually, maybe a good starter in the NFL, but in that first game, didn't look all that great. So, tonight it'll be a new opportunity for him. And then you have the receivers. Dorial Green-Beckham, of course, was acquired by a trade. They had to give up Dennis Kelly, basically a bubble guy to get him, so that kind of tells you what the Titans thought of Green-Beckham. He's not going to play tonight, but it does at least kind of put some pressure. It kind of serves notice to the Eagles receivers currently on the team that somebody's got to step up or, some guys are going to be gone. I mean, Nelson Aguilar's been kind of invisible throughout training camp in the first preseason game. He's not going anywhere. They're not going to cut him after 1 year after being the 20th overall pick a year ago. But then you have guys like who may have roster spots on the line, like Josh Huff, who, is in his third year now and really hasn't developed into the kind of receiver they hoped he would, had a fumble last week. And then Ruben Randall, who really just had one of the more pathetic efforts that I've ever seen from a professional athlete in that first preseason game. Didn't want to block, didn't want to run routes, had a really bad drop, had a boneheaded play where he swats the ball out of bounds, costs him a first down, puts him in third and long, and they wind up hunting on that series. Just awful effort all the way across the board for him. So, there's somebody from this receiving corps has to, has to up their game a little bit, and because really all they have right now is Jordan Matthews, who, in my opinion, is good professional receiver, is going to be in the league for a long time. But with him out, I mean, just to get a look at the quarterback, just to get just to be competent and give the other players on the team a chance to kind of run the offense. That's kind of all I'm asking for at this point out of the receivers, because they've just been really bad.
Jimmy, speaking of the wide receivers, you actually wrote over at phillyvoice.com, Ruben Randall produced one of the most embarrassing efforts I've ever seen out of a professional athlete, which I tend to agree with, but I find it interesting that with Dorial Green-Beckham coming in and all the reports of Jordan Matthews loves this move because he played against the guy and all the weird reports that are coming in and out of Eagles facility, to me it seems like Matthews, Aguilar, those guys seem to be good, but between the effort of Randall and the fact that Givens is pretty much a one-trick pony, is it fair to assume that possibly those two guys, even though they were brought in to be the veteran receivers, may be the ones on the chopping block?
Yeah, so Matthews and Aguilar aren't going anywhere. I would imagine that Green-Beckham will make the team, seeing as they traded for him. Josh Huff, I would assume, will also make the team because he's the best kick returner on the team. Now, if they had a running back later throughout, because I think they have some depth issues there as well, but if they had a running back as the preseason progresses, as teams kind of cut down their rosters and they get a guy who can return kicks, then maybe Josh Huff's roster spot could be in danger, but I think for now he's kind of safe. And then you have three guys thereafter in Ruben Randall, Chris Givens, and then an undrafted rookie free agent wide receiver in Paul Turner, who has actually played pretty well and has stepped up his game. I think clearly had the most catches, probably by far, of any of the receivers in camp. That would include Jordan Matthews, of course, who got hurt. But he had a good camp, and he caught 6 passes in that first preseason game. Looks like a decent enough route runner. It doesn't have the best speed, it doesn't have the best size, but has at least shown effort. So that beats a few guys right off the bat there. So I think that final roster spot at the wide receiver position will be between Randall, Givens, and Turner. And if it were me, I'd keep Turner over the other two.
Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Talking with Jimmy Kempski, covers the Eagles for PhillyVoice.com. Jimmy, sticking on the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned the running backs and the depth issues. What should we expect to see? Who's going to get to play tonight? We know that Ryan Matthews is healthy, which is a plus. Smallwood was injured earlier in training camp. We know Kenyon Barner got the bulk of the carries in Game 1. So what can we expect to see from the running backs tonight?
I think Ryan Matthews is a really good player. Obviously, anytime you say the word Ryan Matthews, it's accompanied by the phrase, if he can stay healthy. So, he's got, I think he was, since he's been in the league, which I believe he was drafted in 2010, he's been on the injury report 53 times. So, the number of games that he missed over his career isn't really all that crazy, but he always seems to be dinged up, but when he plays, he's good. We saw last year he had a really high yards per carry average. That tailed off a little bit as the season progressed because he did get dinged up. But when he's healthy, he's a really good player. The only thing that he really doesn't do all that great, which is kind of a prerequisite to Doug Peterson's offense, is that they want guys to catch the ball. I thought he had some problem with catching the ball that season. He had a lot of drops. So that's an area where he kind of has to improve. But he's a good player if he can stay healthy. And beyond him, you really don't have a guy who is kind of a proven, three-down back. I mean, Sproles, of course, is a dynamic player. You're not going to have him out there for 3 downs, and I don't know if they'll really even use him as a traditional running back. I think Doug Peterson wants to kind of move him around the formation and force mismatches against, with him against linebackers in the passing game. So that's kind of how he'll be used. And then the other two guys, Kenyon Barner, for my money, is just too inconsistent to trust at this point. He doesn't really have that many carries over the course of his career. He had some issues of his own with drops last year, and he had that really just kind of unforgivable fumble against the Patriots, and really was their best win of the season last year. But he almost lost them that game. So I think that as the preseason progresses, you may see them go after a running back that gets cut. You mentioned Wendell Smallwood as well. It's a guy who he's got some good burst, and he does catch the ball well out of the backfield, but the big concern there with him is can he pass protect? He really just wasn't very good at that when he was at West Virginia. We haven't really seen him pass protect in training camp because he was out with an injury for a little while. So if he does get some playing time tonight, which I assume he will, we'll get a first glimpse at what he can do in pass protection, I would imagine. So that'll be his first real test. But again, when you look at that running back position, they have that one guy at the top who can play, and in terms of a 3-down back, but it has that injury concern, and then beyond him, I think they don't really have a lot of depth.
Jimmy Kempski with us talking Eagles football. You can follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Kempski, Jimmy, capital KEMPSKI, and you had a nice article the other day, Jimmy, about 5 reasons for pessimism, and Josh and I talk sometimes, and he says, "Why are you so negative?" And I said, "I grew up in Philadelphia. It's Negadelphia." I mean, I thought the sub-point that you had about the offensive line, a.k.a. the offensive line is a potential disaster, is probably the biggest thing that I have looked at so far as training camp has evolved. Your thoughts on the offensive line and why you put that as your number 2 item of pessimism?
Well, I did have 5 reasons for optimism too, so I'm not.
I am going to highlight that, Jimmy. I will highlight that. Pete wants to be pessimistic. I want to be optimistic.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, well, again, the offensive line, you have Alan Barber moving out to right tackle, and like I said earlier, he's a guy who didn't have a great season last year at left guard, and now you're asking him to move out in a bigger role at right tackle, and then with him vacating that spot at left guard, you're plugging in a rookie there, and Isaac Seumalo, who didn't have a great game week 1 in the first preseason game. I think he eventually may be a good starter in the NFL, but I think you're going to see some growing pains early if he is the guy that they have slated there. And of course, they have Stefan Wisniewski, who they signed in the offseason as a free agent. Has a lot of experience in the NFL, has over 70 starts, has never came into a game as a backup, so he's been a starter from day one as a rookie in the NFL. I'm a little surprised that they have Seumalo going in ahead of Wisniewski, but I think there's still a battle there. I don't think it's certainly not Seumalo's job at this point, but that offensive line, you look from left to right. You have Peters, who's kind of good for an injury or 2 every year, and you have the rookie at left guard. You have Jason Kelsey, who has had very good seasons in the past, but is coming off a very down season. He's got to bounce back from what he would admit was a bad season a year ago. And at right guard, you have Brandon Brooks, who, was kind of a heralded free agent signing this year. I think a lot of people feel good about him. But when you look at what where he is now, he's got to gain continuity with two guys on each side of him, and Kelsey, and before it was Lane Johnson. So any continuity he built up with Lane Johnson to his right is kind of out the window, and he's even missed some time with a hamstring injury as well. So he's got to come back from that and kind of begin to gel with this offensive line. So there's concern there. As you mentioned, Mal Barbie at right tackle. So, beyond those guys, they do have a little bit of depth on the interior of the offensive line with Stefan Wisniewski being able to play any of those three spots on the interior. But out of tackle, you have Matt Tobin, who's backing up Peters on the left side. And then on the right side, who even knows who play over there? I don't know if that would be Tobin or if it would be somebody else. But I think they're in deep trouble again if they lose another guy on that side.
And we'll stay one more on the negative side before we let you and Josh go all positive. But your fifth point, with visual evidence, by the way, if you remember in school where the teacher was like, now make sure you use visual aids. That always helps through your presentation. And you throw the picture. You have not only a picture where you say the starting quarterback is underwhelming and basically admitting that you're not the president of the Sam Bradford fan club, but you also have the great freeze frame showing Brent Selleck open at about the 15-yard line, but then at about the 8-yard line, Zach Ertz is wide open for the deeper throw down the field. And maybe you can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, Sam Bradford a season ago, I think it was 17.2 or 17.3% of his completions a year. And we're talking about completed passes here. Traveled more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, and that was tied for the lowest percentage in the NFL with a guy who you would expect in Alex Smith and a guy in Eli Manning. They ran that quick strike West Coast offense in New York last year. So, when he's in there and he's completing, he had a decent. The one stat where it's kind of redeeming for Sam Bradford last year was completion percentage, where I believe he was 11th in the NFL. Completion percentage, but it's because he was checking down a lot. So, you look at the rest of his stats, you look at his touchdowns, he's in the 20s. Pass rating, I believe he was 25th in the NFL. Yards per attempt, I believe he was 26th in the NFL. So, you just across the board, his numbers just weren't very good a season ago with the exception of completion percentage. It's because he was making the easy throw more than he was making the throw that he should make. And, I don't want to make too much of one throw, obviously, in a preseason game. But it's kind of like what he kind of is, where he checked it down to Brent Selleck for, a short 3-yard game when he had Zach Ertz, who, by the way, is like right in the sight line on that play, is down the field, wide open. So, I think that's just kind of what he is as a quarterback. I think he's kind of like a less mobile version of Alex Smith. And I just think that, obviously with the Eagles having drafted, Carson Wentz this offseason and putting the resources that they did into acquiring him. Obviously, I think Sam Bradford's going to be gone after this season to be determined what they'll be able to get in return for him.
Talk with Jimmy Kempski, covers the Eagles for PhillyVoice.com. Let's go over to the optimism side of the page. And I would say most of the optimism is like your list here, Jimmy. It's on the defense. Let's start with the safeties. Right. You have them listed at number 2. Safety play has been a problem in the NFL, as you write. Not just in the NFL, the Eagles, ever since Brian Dawkins left, this team has been in search of anybody, please play safety. And now they have 2 high-caliber safeties back there, Jimmy.
Yeah, I like both of them a lot. I think Malcolm Jenkins is absurdly underrated. I think he's easily one of the top 5 safeties in the NFL. I think Rodney McLeod is a great addition to this team. He's a smaller guy. I don't know if he would have been a guy that Chip Kelly would have brought in because of their priority on bigger players. But he's a guy who'll hit. He can run. He's got great instincts, and I think he's going to make some plays this year for the Eagles this year. So I really like what they've done there. And then you look at the defensive line, where really they're just in great shape there, in my opinion. Fletcher Cox is one of the premier interior defensive line players in the NFL. And I think Benny Logan's actually going to play well in a role in which he can penetrate as opposed to two gapping and letting the linebackers make plays behind him. I think he could have a surprisingly good season as well. And if you pay too much attention to a guy like Fletcher Cox, I think the guys on the edges are good enough to create some havoc. I think Vinny Curry is a guy who can, if you just ask him to put his head down and go after the quarterback, he can do that. He had 9.5 sacks a couple of years ago. I think he had 4 forced fumbles, and that's in a very limited number of snaps. So he's going to get a lot more playing time. He's going to get way more playing time in 2016 than he ever has over the course of his career. So I like his chances of succeeding this year. And then Connor Barwin's had a good career. Brandon Graham, I think, is an underrated pass rusher. So they do have a lot of guys who can get after the quarterback, and I think they will.
And just to further that point, Jimmy, you had Means last night. It was the one who got the strip from the fumble and started the turnover. So you could even have guys who are maybe not your, shall I say, the highest caliber players on the roster, and they can even be successful in a defense just because it seems like the way Jim Schwartz has everybody lined up, he puts them in position to make plays.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the reporters, I guess, had heard from one of the undrafted rookie free agents, defensive tackle, I think it was Aziz Shittu, who told him that the defensive tackles have the ability to call out stunts at the line of scrimmage. And the reporter asked Schwartz about that, and Schwartz didn't like that got out. I'm about to go into a tunnel under a mountain here, by the way, on the way to Pittsburgh. So if I lose you, I apologize. But
I know what tunnel you're going in, so good luck with that.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think what he's going to allow the defensive linemen to do in terms of being able to put their head down and just go after the quarterback, and he wants the defensive line to be able to get there on their own. He doesn't want to have to dedicate blitzers to getting after the quarterback and let the back seven play behind those guys. But he's going to put those defensive linemen in a position where they're going to maximize their chances to put up big numbers this season.
The not quite 40 Jimmy Kempski with us, getting his way to the game tonight between the Eagles and the Steelers. I'm not obsessed with your age. I just wanted to prove that I could do math correctly.
Right.
Couple reunions for people tonight, like Deuce Staley spent some time in Pittsburgh. I know Brent Barrett-Jones spent some time there. Looks like Steph Wisniewski, another guy. Have you been there before? Did you have your Primanti brothers? Is there anything you did around the city when you got there last night, or is today you're literally going in today? This is a one-off.
I'm devastated that I didn't think of the Barrett Jones storyline. That's I don't know how. Whoa, I missed that one.
Oh, I'm stealing that right out of the notes. You know that I didn't come up with that on my own.
I was out here. I was out here when they played Pittsburgh. I guess it would have been that dumpster fire season in 2012.
Oh, yeah.
We played them early in the season out here. That was when I think Michael Vick had a bad fumble in that game.
Dream team.
The Eagles should have won that game, and they kind of handed it to the Steelers that afternoon. So I've been out here one other time. I will say that Pittsburgh has one of the better press box spreads of the places that I've been so far in the NFL.
Well, that warms my heart. I'd certainly love to eat. And where's the meal? What time do they start serving it? Jimmy Kempski, safe travels to you, pal. We really appreciate you coming on with us. And don't worry, that birthday with a 4 is coming soon.
I'm not looking forward to that. But thanks for having me on.